Welcome to Jim Cantelon Today. This is Bible teaching for the 21st century. We're in the Sermon on the Mount, just into it. Jesus is now beginning to address some of the old Mosaic laws and some of the oral law that sprang out of the Mosaic law, and giving a whole new spin on what pleases the Lord and what doesn't. And as his listeners are sitting there on the Mount of Beatitudes, their eyes are spinning and their minds are going double duty. They can't believe what they're hearing. And we'll get to more of it right after this.
Jim Cantelon has published a Bible commentary from the genealogies of Jesus Christ to the chosen disciples. This is an exclusive and amazing work on the life of Christ. From Matthew's chapter 1 to 4, this commentary is the only way to hear Jim on what Jesus Christ did and how the Lord revealed him to us, and what that means to us every day in every way. For your copy, we ask that you send your best gift to Jim Cantelon Today. You can write or call or go to the website. Send to Jim Cantelon Today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R3Y7. Or call us at 519-415-8341. Or visit us at jimcantelontoday.com.
Now, just so you know, I mentioned last show that Jesus is going to deal with three aspects of Mosaic law, and then he's going to deal with three aspects of oral law, and you might be wondering what those are. With the Old Testament law, we looked at this last time, murder and anger, and the relationship between the two, and how most murders are predicated on anger, on the vilification, the total disdainful view of neighbor. Now we're going to deal with adultery and lust, which is often misread and misinterpreted by many commentators. Then we're going to deal with oaths, those solemn vows that you make that have legal ramifications. Those all are Mosaic law issues. Then with the oral law, he's going to deal with divorce, retaliation, and hatred and love. All right, just so you know, I'm not going to cover all of that on this program, but that's where we're heading. All right. Okay. Verse 27 of Matthew 5. You've heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out, cast it from you. More profitable for you that one of your members perish than your whole body be cast into hell. Verse 30, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. More profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. All right, now this is pretty stern stuff. And most guys who are wired to be visually attracted to women read what Jesus is saying here and they despair, because there's not a red-blooded male out there who hasn't been physically attracted by what he sees. And Jesus is saying, if you look at a woman to lust for her, you've already committed adultery with her in your heart. I remember years ago, President Jimmy Carter was interviewed by a pornographic magazine, and they got great joy out of the fact that he admitted he'd committed adultery many times in his heart. He was just simply saying, yeah, I found women attractive all my life. That doesn't mean I've gone to bed with them, but yeah, I've liked what I've seen. This is not what Jesus is getting at here. All right, you need to hear this. In the Greek language, it's more accurately to lust after a woman. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean looking at her and finding her attractive. What it means is finding her attractive and determining in your mind that you are going to get her to bed. It is a process. It's not just a case of visual attraction. It's a case, okay, now I'm going to act on that visual attraction and I'm going to seduce her. Or I'm going to flirt with her. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to, spend money, whatever it takes, because I want her in bed. That's what it means to lust after. And so with lusting after, there is an end game, if you will. And that end game is sexual intercourse somewhere, usually in bed, right? I want to have sex with her. That's essentially what is meant here in the Greek language. And that's a far cry from just simply finding a woman attractive. So for those of you guys out there who've been struggling with this, I hope you're feeling just a touch liberated. Why? Because adultery doesn't just happen. It's a process. As a pastor, I don't know how many times I've sat in the privacy and the confidentiality of pastoral consultations with people. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to refer to anything specific. I'm going to be very general here right now. But time and again, as people explain their adulteries, they tell me about the physical attraction, that first look, but then they talk about the first time I looked her in the eye, or he looked me in the eye, we locked eyes, there was something, there was a spark, there was a magnetism there, and then you kind of, sidle up and just sort of casually brush against someone at a party or in some social setting. You find yourself over in a corner for a period of time, very innocently in front of everybody, having a lovely conversation. Increment by increment by increment, bonding and giving nonverbal signals to the other person that you like their presence, you like what you see, and the idea of being engaged with you sexually, I find attractive. This process can sometimes take a year, 2 years, 5 years. I've heard so many different versions of this story from individuals and from couples who confess their adultery to me. Adultery, like murder, doesn't just happen. Something has to surround it, precede it, undergird it, nourish it. And this is the point Jesus is making. Adultery begins with physical attraction, but that physical attraction must then catalyze a lusting after before the process truly begins. But he's saying, don't let any of you who've been involved in adulterous relationships tell me that it was bigger than both of you. That's a cop-out. It's something that you cultivated. It's something that you held close to your heart. It's something you fantasized about. It's something that you dreamed about. You woke up in the morning thinking about it. You went to bed at night before sleeping thinking about it. And eventually it culminated in that sexual action. You see, the Pharisees were one of the religious groupings of Jesus' day. You had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, you had the scribes, all of them with different kind of conservative, liberal, neutral worldviews, very similar to the same kind of polarities that exist even to this day. But they were trying to water down the moral challenge against adultery by saying the trouble was not their desires and hearts, but the fact that they could see and act. Jesus says, okay, if that's what you're saying, that it all has to do with your physical attraction, the fact that you can see and then perform, get rid of your eye. your hand got you in trouble, cut it off. No, Jesus is not suggesting for a minute he wanted a bunch of dismembered disciples following him around. But what he's saying is, this business of trying to say that adultery is merely a physical act and merely a physical attraction, you need to understand it has a spiritual root. And you have to have sinned against that woman in your heart before you ever take her to bed. The act of sex is nothing other than the physical, if you will, reenactment of something that you in your heart have already done scores of times. I don't know how often someone across my desk has sat there with tears and groaning, saying, "Oh, Pastor, if I just had it to do over again." I had no idea. If you're considering adultery, give your head a shake. Not only are you going to sin against this other person with whom you're going to have sex, but you're going to sin against your Maker. And if you're married, you're going to sin against your husband or your wife. You're going to sin against your kids. You're going to sin against your extended family. You're going to sin against your neighbors. You're going to sin against your workmates. Yes. Because it's all going to come out. It will not remain hidden. And when it comes out, you're going to lose far, far more than you ever might have gained from this intriguing liaison. Give your head a shake. I remember one guy who lost everything because of his adulterous affair. Lost his marriage, lost the respect of his kids. He even lost his job. But the thing that he lost, that he missed and valued the most, and he told me this, he said, "Pastor, it's my reputation." How much is your reputation worth? You know, we take reputation for granted, but as soon as we've lost it, we walk around in embarrassment, avoiding people's eyes, sneaking into corners, walking in the shadows, and or in angry fits of self-justification, lashing out at the people who, for whatever reason, are so embarrassed by what we've done that they just really can't approach us anymore. I thought they were my best friends. Now I've really found out who they are. Well, you know what? Sometimes your very best friends just don't know what to say to you. And it could very well be that your action has so offended your best friend and maybe even had an impact on their life and their family life that there's no way there's ever going to be real reconciliation. Now, by the grace of God, there can be reconciliation in pretty much every broken situation, and I would never deny that. But in the arena of human interaction, that reputation of yours is worth a heck of a lot. Okay, let's move on to one of the products of adultery. Verse 31. Furthermore, it has been said, and this, of course, is oral law we're talking about here now. Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't know if I can cover this in 4 minutes. That's what I got left for this segment, but I'll do my best. There was this debate among the rabbis of Jesus' day. The context is marriage was under siege. You know, we think that marriage is going through a hard time these days. It's always gone through a hard time. In Jesus' time, it was really under siege, and you had, complicating the matter, the convergence or the clashing of Jewish, Roman, and Greek cultures. And if you have done any study of the cultures of the day, you will appreciate the very quick summaries I'm going to give you right now. The Jewish view of marriage was that marriage is a sacred duty. It was something every man must do as marry a woman. In fact, if he didn't, he was sinning. At the same time, the Jewish culture was very straightforward with regard to divorce. In terms of Deuteronomy 24, verses 1 to 4, read it for yourself, Deuteronomy 24, 1 to 4. Very straightforward. Just write a bill of divorcement. The school of Shammai, who was one of the leading rabbis of the day, very legalistic on this matter. The school of Hillel, very liberal. Liberal conservative, ever thus, right? In the time of Jesus, the school of Hillel was pretty much carrying the day, to the point where someone could divorce his wife for any reason. Divorce had become a very easy thing. Now, why had Moses reluctantly granted, Israeli men the right to divorce a woman? He did it, Jesus says, because of the hardness of your hearts. But the genius of the bill of divorcement was this: until Moses made that law, a woman was basically not just a piece of property, she could be cast off like a handkerchief. Then if a guy decided in his sexual adventures that maybe his first wife wasn't all that bad after all, he would come back and reclaim her. And so she had no say in being divorced. She had no say in being reclaimed. She was like a prized animal. She wasn't a human being. Moses insisted that a bill of divorce be filled out so that if that man who divorced his wife wanted to come back and reclaim her, she could hold up the bill of divorce and say, hang on. See this? It's been notarized. You and I are legally divorced. You cannot claim me back. Right? That's a part of the context in which Jesus is saying what he is saying here. Now, obviously, I've got to spend more time with this in the next teaching segment because there's so much more to cover here. And I promise you I'll cover it all, even if I have to go to the next show to do it, all right? So that's the joy of just kind of taking our time here with these study segments. Okay, so the bill of divorcement was there to protect the woman. The bill of divorcement was there because men were unfeeling, insensitive, controlling despots. And the woman needed to be protected. And Moses took step one in providing women protection with that bill of divorcement, which she could hold up when forced into a corner. More in a moment.
The work of the Word of God is stunningly remarkable. We must understand that God has placed His life codes of salvation and healing in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jim Cantelon is focused on the messages that God has communicated through the Bible to you and me. Today, it's more important for us now that we learn what God is saying to us. God has placed us here now to be examples and to share the good news of His work with the world today. If you've heard the Divine Mind speak to you through this program, then God has worked in amazing ways to reveal His Word. Remember that this program has cost, and we have been faithful to God to bring this program to you. If you want to give an offering in any amount, we would appreciate it. Send to Jim Cantelon today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. Or call us at 519-415-8341. Or simply visit jimcantelontoday.com.
Okay, I got to continue because I know that you're keen to see me finish this, and I don't know if I'll finish it this show. If not, next show we'll continue. So you had the school of Shammai, the legalistic school. You had the school of Hillel, the liberal view. With the school of Hillel, and this was the common sort of cultural value of the day, you could divorce a woman for any cost. She burned your toast, or her hair was askew this morning, or she had bad breath, or I found someone prettier than she is, or, you know, I don't like the way she's talking to me. You're gone, out of my life. The Greek view, now I mentioned to you that the Jewish view, they had a very high view of marriage, but at the same time, because of Hillel, a very easy divorce process. The Greek view, which was one of the clashing cultures at the time, was essentially a low view of marriage, whereas there was a high view of marriage in Judaism. There was a very low view in the Greek, the Hellenistic world. Sex outside of marriage was common. It was de rigueur. Men had mistresses, and depending on their wealth, they might have a score of them. And it was just accepted as the reality. Wives just expected their husbands to be playing the field. And it was accepted. But the wife had to be pure. No adultery on her part. And the husband, at the same time, had total license to do whatever he wanted sexually. And if a married woman was caught in adultery, in many cases, death was the only thing she could face. And like the Jew, though, the Greek, the Jewish culture under the influence of the Rabbi Hillel, the Greek could divorce his wife by dismissing her. In the Greek context, however, he had to dismiss her in the presence of two witnesses. So, you know, my good old drinking buddies, come on here for a minute. Come on here, George and Al. I'm dismissing Alice here. You witness to it? You're gone. And again, the woman was basically treated like chattel. She was a property to be purchased easily and to be disposed of easily. And that was a very significant player in the mix of cultural views of marriage in Jesus' day. Then there was the Roman view. Now, this surprised me as I did the research on this. The Romans had a very high view of marriage. In fact, for the first 500 years of the Roman Commonwealth, there was not one recorded divorce. I had to double check that as I researched it. That doesn't mean men weren't sleeping around. They were. But even though they had 15 mistresses, they still were committed to their wife for life, and she to him. But then Rome conquered Greece, and by the 2nd century before Christ, the Greek morality had conquered Rome. And the easy view of divorce in the Greek culture became assimilated by the Roman culture, and divorce became common and very easy. Okay? So, as Jesus is talking here now about divorce and remarriage, he's talking in the context of those cultural realities. High view of marriage in the Jewish culture, but easy divorce because of the influence of the school of Hillel. Greek influence, Hellenistic influence, divorce there with two witnesses. And then the Roman culture, once it had been defeated by Greek morality, same thing. So in every case, the woman was the loser, all right? So when Jesus says here, in verse 32, but I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason or for any cause, except adultery, you got to read into that any cause terminology as referring to the liberal Rabbi Hillel's view of marriage and divorce. You can divorce your wife for any cause. The minority view in Israel in Jesus' time was the view of Shammai, the Rabbi Shammai, the conservative. His view was marriage is sacrosanct and can be broken only by divorce. that is based on sexual immorality. And that is the only cause for divorce, sexual immorality. So what Jesus is doing here is he's answering a question with a question. Marriage is exclusive, one man, one woman. Marriage is permanent. You cleave to your woman or your husband. You are one flesh. You're joined by God. And the fact that this union has been blessed by and presenced by the Creator gives it a level of sanctity that only God can bring. Now, I still haven't dealt with the further part of this when he says, whoever marries a woman who's divorced commits adultery. I'll have to get that next time. Keep you hanging.
Remote and rural, these children and their families have no access to medical care. There is no clinic nearby. And when a mother is desperate to save her dying child, she will walk for many hours. Sometimes the child doesn't survive. So we go to them. These tables and chairs under the trees look like a gathering, not a medical clinic. But the doctors and nurses are transforming the lives of the children and their families. They provide primary medical care, classes on sanitation, medicines, and a better understanding of HIV and AIDS. Most of all, they bring hope as they diagnose, treat, and educate families. This clinic is a gift from donors that will transform their lives. You can become part of that transformation. Your gift of $25 will provide health care for an entire family. $100 provides care for 6 families. Be a part of real change. Go to wowmission.ca/saveachild.
Remember, friends, you can write, email, click, and ask for Cantelon's Casual Commentary. I'm releasing every 4 to 6 weeks another installment of this little booklet. Over the course of a year and a half, it's going to be a whole book. And I fill in the blanks in terms of stuff I can't cover on air, but I cover by writing. And I'm looking for your best ministry gift. We're totally dependent on your support. So keep that in mind when you ask for it. Thanks.
Contact us. Jim Cantelon Today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. If you're sending a check, make it payable to Jim Cantelon Today. Or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com and click Support.